Bedtime detective story, Enola and the Whispering Trunk. Chapter 1, The Whispering Trunk. It was late, and the streets of London had already been swallowed by the heavy shadows of night. The rain, which had fallen in sheets for the better part of the afternoon, had finally given way to a misty drizzle, coating the cobblestones in a thin sheen of water that reflected the dim glow of the gas lamps lining the streets. Most sensible people were already tucked in for the night, their minds at ease, unaware of the dark mystery that was about to unravel. But for Enola Holmes, sleep was a luxury she had long given up. Her latest case had brought her to the bustling streets of Bloomsbury, where she was staying with a friend of her mother's, a warm, inviting woman named Miss Viola Thornton. The place had an unassuming charm, the kind of peaceful quiet that suggested nothing ever really happened here. That was, of course, until the day the trunk appeared. It had arrived unannounced, a large, heavy thing wrapped in layers of tattered cloth, sitting innocuously on the doorstep of the Thornton residence one damp morning. The deliveryman had been long gone by the time Miss Thornton had found it, but there had been no note, no indication of its origins. It was as if it had appeared out of thin air, with no explanation but a deep, unsettling sense of mystery. Miss Thornton, eager to help, had brought it inside, and there it sat in the hall for days, collecting dust and raising questions. That was until the whispers began. At first, Enola thought it was nothing more than the trick of an overactive imagination. But then, on the fifth night after the trunk's arrival, she heard it distinctly, soft, barely audible, as if it were coming from the very center of the trunk itself. The whispering. It was a sound that grated on the edge of perception, a susurrus that neither felt quite natural nor entirely explainable. Enola was intrigued, as she always was when faced with something that didn't make sense. She had been tracking this odd sensation for several nights now, unable to shake the feeling that it was no mere trick of the wind or the house settling. There was something about the trunk, something hidden, that called to her. Tonight, however, Enola had resolved to get to the bottom of it. She had stayed up later than usual, waiting for the soft murmur to return, and sure enough, just as the clock struck midnight, she heard it, a quiet whisper, low and indistinct, like the rustling of old paper or the murmur of a distant conversation. "Miss Thornton," she called softly, not taking her eyes off the trunk. "Come quickly. You must hear this." Viola Thornton, a kind woman who had treated Enola like a second daughter, appeared in the doorway of the sitting room. Her silvery hair was neatly pinned, and she wore a soft, lavender-colored dressing gown, but there was an unmistakable frown on her face. "Enola, what on earth are you?" "Listen," Enola interrupted, her voice firm but urgent. The whispering stopped as soon as Miss Thornton took a step forward. Enola felt her pulse quicken. The silence hung heavy in the air for a moment, broken only by the faint hum of the fire crackling in the hearth. "I don't hear anything," Miss Thornton said, her voice a mix of confusion and concern. "I told you," Enola said with conviction, "there's something strange about that trunk. I'm not imagining it. There's a secret here, and I mean to uncover it." Viola glanced uneasily at the trunk, and though she was far from a nervous sort, the atmosphere in the room seemed to grow heavier, as though the air itself was thickening with mystery. "That old thing," Miss Thornton muttered, her frown deepening. "I've never understood why it was left here. It's far too large for me to move by myself." "Well," Enola replied, narrowing her eyes, "then it's settled. We will open it." Miss Thornton hesitated. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," Enola. It feels off, doesn't it? Enola ignored her hesitation. She had a knack for seeing what others couldn't, and her instincts were telling her that whatever was inside that trunk was at the center of something far more unusual than a mere delivery mix-up. Without waiting for Miss Thornton to protest further, Enola moved to the trunk and placed her hand on the rough wood. It was cold to the touch, like a block of ice. She could feel the subtle vibrations now, like something trapped inside, faintly pulsing beneath the surface. The more she focused, the more the whispers seemed to reverberate in her ears, so faint she almost wondered if they were in her mind, or if they were indeed coming from the trunk. "It's been here for days," Enola said, a hint of excitement in her voice. "And it hasn't moved an inch. What could possibly be inside?" She knelt beside the trunk, carefully prying open the rusty clasp with a tool she'd borrowed from Miss Thornton's workroom. The lid groaned in protest as it shifted upwards, revealing a tangled mass of old, brittle fabric and a collection of objects stacked carelessly inside. But it wasn't the items that caught Enola's attention. It was the faint smell, something like decaying paper and spices. And then, underneath all of that, a peculiar glint of something metallic. Enola leaned closer, her eyes narrowing in concentration as she pulled out the fabric, revealing a small box, no larger than the size of a child's hand. It was a box unlike anything Enola had seen before, made of blackened wood with strange symbols etched into its surface. The box itself seemed to hum with energy, a presence that made Enola's skin prickle. As her fingers brushed against it, the whispering began again, louder this time. It wasn't just words, it was a name. Adelaide. Enola jumped, startled by the sudden clarity of the whisper. The name echoed in her mind, as if it was trying to break through, like a long-forgotten memory trying to emerge from the shadows. "Did you hear that?" Enola whispered urgently, turning to Miss Thornton, but the older woman was frozen in place, staring at the box with wide eyes. "Adelaide?" Miss Thornton's voice was a mere breath, and Enola could tell that the name had affected her deeply. "That's impossible," she muttered, almost to herself. She's been gone for so long." Enola raised an eyebrow, but she didn't press for more answers just yet. There was a story here, and she was certain that the trunk, and its mysterious contents, were at the heart of it. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Miss Thornton," Enola said firmly. "I promise you. We must." As she carefully placed the box on the table, the whispering seemed to subside, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Enola knew that this was only the beginning, but her instincts told her that something far more complex was at play here. The trunk had come to them for a reason, its secrets were waiting to be uncovered. And Enola Holmes was never one to back away from a mystery. Chapter 2: The Mystery of Adelaide. The room was thick with tension, the only sound the occasional crackle of the fire as the flames danced in the hearth. The small box sat on the table between Enola and Miss Thornton, its presence commanding all attention. Enola couldn't shake the feeling that it was far more than an ordinary object. It hummed with something hidden, some secret waiting to be uncovered. Miss Thornton, who had been silent since the whispering began, was now standing by the window, her hand pressed to the glass as she stared out into the foggy night. Enola could see the way her shoulders tensed, as if she were grappling with some old memory, or perhaps a fear she hadn't spoken of in years. "Miss Thornton," Enola said gently, her voice cutting through the silence, "who is Adelaide?" Miss Thornton didn't turn to face her, but Enola could see the way her fingers tightened around the edge of the curtain. She was clearly struggling with something, a wariness in her posture that Enola recognized from her own investigations. When someone is holding back a truth they're afraid to confront. "That name," Miss Thornton said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. "Adelaide. It's a name from the past. From a time long before you came into my life, Enola." Enola didn't say anything immediately, waiting for Miss Thornton to continue. Her mind was already working, trying to piece together the connection between the trunk, the box, and the name that had come through the whispers. Miss Thornton sighed deeply, as though the weight of her own memories was a burden too heavy to bear. "Adelaide was my sister," she finally said, her voice strained with emotion. "She disappeared years ago. Vanished without a trace. Everyone assumed she was dead. But I've never stopped wondering." Enola leaned forward slightly, her curiosity piqued. "Disappeared? How? What happened to her?" Miss Thornton turned to face her then, her eyes brimming with something Enola couldn't place, fear, perhaps, or the remnants of grief that still haunted her after so many years. "She was involved with a group," Miss Thornton began, her voice faltering. "A secret society, one that we'd never fully understood. It was something my father got involved in before I was born. The Society of the Crimson Veil, had a reputation for secrecy and influence. My father was one of the founders, but I never knew the full extent of their activities." Enola's brow furrowed at the mention of the group. The Society of the Crimson Veil, it was a name she had heard in passing, but she had never delved too deeply into its origins. From what she knew, it was rumored to be an ancient society, one that dealt with matters of power, influence, and sometimes mystical practices. "And Adelaide?" Enola asked, sensing the heart of the mystery was beginning to unfold. Miss Thornton's gaze shifted toward the trunk again. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them in front of her. "Adelaide became deeply involved with them. I warned her. She was so young, so eager to prove herself. But she became obsessed with their beliefs. One day, she simply disappeared. No warning. No note. Just gone." Enola's mind raced. A secret society, a missing sister, and now a trunk that seemed to be calling out to them. It all pointed to something far darker than a simple disappearance. "The Society of the Crimson Veil," Enola said slowly, as though testing the name on her tongue. "Do you think they took her?" Miss Thornton closed her eyes for a moment, as though she were trying to block out the memory. "I don't know. I've spent years trying to understand what happened to her. But the more I looked into it, the more I uncovered things that frightened me. Things that didn't make sense. They were involved with occult practices, rituals, ceremonies, but it wasn't just that. They were after something more, something that could give them power beyond what ordinary men could grasp." Enola sat up straighter. Power beyond what ordinary men can grasp? Her mind was buzzing now, every clue slotting into place. What kind of power? Miss Thornton shook her head. "I don't know. I was never allowed to learn the details. But I do know one thing, Adelaide became obsessed with them, and in the end, she paid the price." The room was heavy with silence, the weight of Miss Thornton's words hanging in the air. Enola could sense that the missing piece of the puzzle was just out of reach. The trunk, the box, the whispers, they were all tied together in a way that Miss Thornton hadn't fully understood. There was a connection here, a thread that ran deep, and Enola was determined to follow it, no matter where it led. She stood up, her eyes never leaving the box. "Miss Thornton, there's something inside this trunk. I can feel it. Whatever happened to Adelaide, I think this trunk is part of the answer." Miss Thornton's face paled at the thought, and she took a step back. "Enola, I don't know if we should go any further. This is dangerous. You have no idea what you're dealing with." But Enola's resolve was firm. She had dealt with danger before. She had faced down the impossible and found answers when others had given up. This was no different. "I understand that you're afraid," Enola said, her voice soft but filled with determination. "But I can't turn back now. The truth is in this trunk, and I'm going to find it." Miss Thornton seemed to hesitate, her eyes filled with a complex mix of fear, love, and long-buried grief. But after a moment, she nodded. "I don't want you to go alone, Enola. Let me help you. If this is about Adelaide, if this is about the truth, then we need to face it together." Enola looked at her with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. "You'll help?" "I will," Miss Thornton replied. "But you must promise me one thing: if things get too dangerous, we stop. No matter what." Enola smiled, a flicker of warmth passing through her. "I promise." Together, they set to work. Enola carefully examined the box, her fingers brushing the symbols etched into its surface. They were faint, almost indecipherable, but there was a rhythm to them, a pattern that seemed to pulse with an energy that was barely contained. "Do you recognize these markings?" Enola asked, glancing up at Miss Thornton. Miss Thornton stepped forward, her eyes squinting at the symbols. I've seen them before," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But where?" Enola's pulse quickened. "Where?" Miss Thornton stepped back, her face pale. "On the books my father kept. On some of the old letters. I thought they were nothing more than old nonsense, things I didn't understand. But now," she trailed off, her eyes wide with realization. "What do they mean?" Enola asked. Miss Thornton swallowed hard. "They're a form of ancient writing. I remember my father once saying they were a key. A key to something powerful." Enola's heart raced. She was on the verge of something important, something that could finally explain the mystery behind the trunk, the box, and the whispers. "Then let's unlock it," Enola said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Let's see what it holds." Chapter 3: The Secret Key. The room seemed to grow colder as Enola and Miss Thornton stood over the box, its presence heavy between them. Enola had felt the pull of something larger ever since the whispering began, and now, with the symbols and the mystery of Adelaide swirling around them, it was clear that whatever was inside the box would change everything. There was no turning back. Enola took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We need to open it, Miss Thornton," she said, her voice resolute. Miss Thornton hesitated, her fingers brushing over the delicate symbols carved into the wood. "These markings, they're from a language that hasn't been used in centuries. My father spoke of them only once, when he thought no one was listening." Her voice faltered as she looked down at the box. He said they were connected to something ancient, something dangerous. Enola's curiosity flared. Dangerous how? Miss Thornton's eyes grew distant as memories stirred, her gaze shifting as if she were reliving the past. He said the symbols were a key, an ancient key. Not to a door or a room, but to a power. A power that could change the world. Enola's heart skipped a beat. She had encountered powerful secrets before, but this felt different. The weight of history pressed down on her as she pondered Miss Thornton's words. A key to a power that could change the world. Could the trunk, and the box it contained, really be tied to something that significant? And could it explain the disappearance of Adelaide? Do you think this power has anything to do with Adelaide? Enola asked, her voice almost a whisper. Was she involved in something bigger than we imagined? Miss Thornton's eyes clouded with emotion, but she gave a small nod. I didn't want to believe it, but now. I think she was. She wasn't just obsessed with the society. She was drawn to something else. Something that my father had kept hidden from everyone. Enola's fingers moved to the box, her instincts kicking in. The key had to be inside, hidden within the object, just as the whispers had suggested. She gently traced the symbols with her fingers, feeling the vibrations hum softly beneath her touch. The symbols responded, almost as though they were alive, shifting slightly under her hand. Let's open it, Enola said with finality. She found the small latch on the side of the box, hidden beneath the layers of etched designs. With a firm but gentle tug, the latch clicked open. For a brief moment, the room held its breath. Then, with a soft creak, the box opened, revealing its contents. Inside, nestled in a bed of faded velvet, was a small, ornately crafted key, its metal gleaming dully in the dim light. But it wasn't just any key. The handle was shaped like a serpent coiled around itself, its eyes set with two tiny red stones that gleamed ominously. The body of the key was decorated with more of the same symbols Enola had seen on the box, circling patterns that seemed to swirl into infinity. Enola's heart pounded in her chest. She had found it. The key. The one that had been hidden for so long, locked away in the trunk for reasons she couldn't yet comprehend. She carefully lifted the key from its resting place, feeling its cold, smooth surface in her hand. It seemed to hum with energy, like it was waiting for something. Waiting for her to unlock whatever secret lay buried within. This is it, Enola said quietly, her voice a mixture of awe and uncertainty. The key. Miss Thornton stepped forward, her eyes wide with disbelief. It can't be. This is impossible. Her voice faltered, and she closed her eyes for a moment as if trying to make sense of what was happening. This key, it's tied to Adelaide's disappearance. It has to be. Enola glanced up at her. What do you mean? Miss Thornton looked at the key again, her expression haunted. The last time I saw Adelaide, she was holding something like this. It wasn't a key, exactly, but it was a pendant, shaped like a serpent. She told me it was a symbol of their power, the society's power. She said it was the way to unlock what they had been searching for. Enola's mind raced, her curiosity piqued even further. The key, it's tied to the Society of the Crimson Veil, isn't it? Miss Thornton nodded slowly. Yes. They were searching for something. They believed this key would give them access to the power. I thought it was nonsense, just some fantastical belief that my father had indulged in. But now, seeing this, seeing the key, I'm not so sure anymore. Enola's pulse quickened. The key wasn't just an object, it was part of something larger, something tied to the ancient society and the disappearance of Adelaide. But what exactly was this power? What could it unlock? The questions piled up, each one more pressing than the last. We need to understand what this key does, Enola said firmly. I think it's the key to uncovering what happened to Adelaide. Miss Thornton nodded, her face pale but resolute. But how do we use it? What if the society is still looking for it? What if it's too dangerous? We won't know until we try, Enola replied. But I need to find out what it unlocks. I need to know what happened to your sister. Miss Thornton's eyes filled with an emotion that Enola couldn't name. Was it hope? Or fear? It was clear that, for all the pain the mystery had caused, Miss Thornton was desperate for answers. Enola tucked the key safely into her pocket, her mind already racing through the possibilities. She knew this was no ordinary mystery. The power that the Society of the Crimson Veil sought could be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And now, with the key in her possession, she was bound to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Let's begin, Enola said quietly. We'll start by finding out everything we can about the society, about the power they wanted. And then, we'll follow the key wherever it leads. The next few days were spent combing through Miss Thornton's father's old documents, letters, and books. Enola was meticulous in her search, determined to find any scrap of information that could point her in the right direction. It became clear to her quickly that Miss Thornton's father had been deeply involved in the Society of the Crimson Veil, though he had kept it well hidden from the rest of the world. Enola felt a deepening sense of urgency with each passing hour. The more she uncovered about the society, the more she realized the danger they had posed, and the danger they still posed. If the key unlocked something as powerful as Miss Thornton suggested, there was no telling what the society would do if they got their hands on it. One night, while leafing through an old journal, Enola came across a set of strange, coded messages written in the margins. The handwriting was familiar, it was Miss Thornton's father's, yet the writing was nearly indecipherable. Enola stared at the page, her mind whirling as she studied the strange markings. It was clear that the journal held vital clues, but how to unlock its secrets? The symbols on the key matched those in the journal, and there, at the end of the page, a single sentence jumped out at her. The serpent shall reveal the truth when the time is right. Enola's heart raced. The serpent. She had seen that symbol before. It was etched into the key. And now, it seemed that it was part of a larger puzzle, one that she was only beginning to understand. Miss Thornton, Enola said, her voice sharp with excitement. I think I've found something. Chapter 4, The Serpent's Truth. The words echoed in Enola's mind as she stared at the cryptic journal entry. The serpent shall reveal the truth when the time is right. It was an eerie phrase, as if written for her, meant for her to discover. The key, the serpent, the mysterious symbols, all of it seemed to be leading her to something far greater than she could have anticipated. Miss Thornton had been sitting quietly across from her, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap, waiting for Enola to decipher the journal's meaning. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting long shadows on the walls of the sitting room. The storm outside had settled into a steady drizzle, but the air inside was thick with tension and the weight of unspoken truths. "Do you know what this means?" Enola asked, looking up from the journal. Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her gaze. Miss Thornton swallowed, her face pale. "I remember my father mentioning the serpent once, long ago. He always spoke of it in hushed tones, as though it were something to fear, something dangerous." She paused, her brow furrowing in thought. "But I never understood what he meant. I never dared to ask." Enola stood up, pacing in front of the fire as she turned the journal over in her hands. The serpent, the key, and the Society of the Crimson Veil, each element seemed to be connected, but how? What was this truth that the serpent would reveal? The whispering had been clear, Adelaide had been involved, and now, Enola could see that the key was far more than just an object. It was a door to something that had remained hidden for far too long. "I think we're on the right track, Miss Thornton," Enola said, her voice determined. "The key is part of a puzzle. We need to understand its full significance, and the serpent symbol must be the key to unlocking it. But what if it's too dangerous?" Miss Thornton asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What if we uncover something we're not meant to know?" Enola turned to her, her expression firm. "That's exactly why we need to know. We can't ignore the past. If we do, it'll come back to haunt us. The Society wants this power. And if they get their hands on it, we won't just be facing a mystery anymore, we'll be facing a catastrophe." Miss Thornton looked away, her eyes clouding with a mixture of fear and sadness. "You're right. Adelaide, she was always chasing after something, always searching. I fear she found it, whatever it was the Society was after." Enola's mind raced as she thought about the possible connections. Adelaide's obsession with the Society, the serpent, the key, it was all starting to take shape, like pieces of a larger puzzle. But there was something else she had to figure out first. What was this power that the Society had been seeking? And why had they concealed it so carefully? "You said your father kept records of the Society's activities," Enola said, glancing at Miss Thornton. "Do you think there's more information hidden among his things? Perhaps another clue that could help us understand the serpent and the key?" Miss Thornton nodded slowly. "There may be more. I've been too afraid to look through everything, too afraid of what I might find. But if it helps us find Adelaide..." Her voice trailed off, and Enola could see the pain in her eyes. She understood. It was never easy to face the past, especially when it involved the ones we loved. But there was no time to waste. The Society, the key, and the secrets that Miss Thornton's father had left behind were all intertwined, and it was up to Enola to unravel them. "Let's go through everything," Enola said, her voice steady with resolve. "We'll start with what we know, and piece it together from there." The night stretched on as they combed through Miss Thornton's father's personal effects. The room was filled with the scent of old books and the rustle of yellowed papers as they sifted through documents, diaries, and letters. Enola was thorough, taking care to examine every detail, every faint clue that might connect the serpent, the key, and the Society. But as the hours passed, the task began to feel overwhelming. So many pieces, so many questions, and still no clear answer. Finally, Just as Enola was about to give up on another stack of journals, a small, leather-bound book caught her eye. It was older than the others, and its edges were worn with age. The cover was unmarked, but Enola could feel that it was different. She pulled it from the pile, her fingers tingling as she opened it to the first page. The handwriting inside was elegant, neat, and unmistakably Miss Thornton's father's. "The Serpent's Truth, the Key to the Veil," the first entry read. Enola's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The answer she had been searching for. She quickly turned the pages, her eyes scanning the text for anything that would explain the serpent, the key, and the society's plans. The more she read, the clearer it became. The book was not just a record, it was a guide. A guide to unlocking the power that the society had been searching for. The serpent, the symbol that had haunted both Miss Thornton and Enola, was a part of an ancient ritual. The key was not merely an object, it was a tool that would unlock the power of the serpent itself. The power that could manipulate time and reality, granting those who wielded it the ability to control life and death. Enola's mind reeled with the implications. This was what the society had been after all along. The power to control time, to bend the fabric of reality. But why had Miss Thornton's father kept it hidden? Why had he not destroyed it? Enola read on, her breath catching in her throat as the final entry began. The serpent must remain bound. The power it offers is both a gift and a curse. If the key falls into the wrong hands, the veil will be lifted, and the world will be undone. Only one can wield the key, and it must not be used for selfish gain. It must remain lost, hidden from those who would seek to destroy everything. Enola closed the book slowly, her fingers trembling. She had uncovered the truth, the serpent, the key, the power it unlocked. But the question remained, could she stop the society from finding it? Miss Thornton, who had been watching her quietly, took a step forward. "What does it mean, Enola? What should we do?" Enola stood up, her mind swirling with the gravity of what she had just learned. The society was right to seek the key. But they were wrong about one thing, they thought they could control it. This power isn't meant to be controlled. It must remain lost, just as Miss Thornton's father said. She turned to Miss Thornton, her expression fierce. "We cannot let the society find the key. Not now. Not ever." Miss Thornton nodded, her face pale but resolute. "But how do we stop them, Enola? How can we keep the key hidden?" Enola smiled grimly, a plan already forming in her mind. "We'll find a way. Together." Chapter 5, The Hidden Path. The weight of the key pressed against Enola's chest as she stood beside Miss Thornton, both women lost in their thoughts. The truth they had uncovered was more dangerous than anything Enola had faced before. The Society of the Crimson Veil sought the power of the serpent, a force that could reshape the very fabric of time and reality. And now that they knew the truth, the question was no longer about solving a mystery, it was about survival. Enola turned the key over in her hand. The serpent-shaped handle glinted in the dim light of the room, its red eyes gleaming with an almost sentient intelligence. The box it had come from was now closed, but it had once contained a secret so powerful it could unravel the world itself. The key, Enola realized, was not merely an object, it was a gate, a passage to something far greater, something no one, least of all the society, should control. Miss Thornton, Enola said, her voice steady but edged with determination. We need to find a place to hide the key, somewhere the society can't reach it. Miss Thornton, who had been standing by the window staring out into the misty night, turned toward her. Her face was pale, a reflection of the anxiety that had taken root ever since they uncovered the journal. I can't help but feel that this is all connected, Adelaide, the society, my father's secrets. Do you think Adelaide knew this key would lead to such power? Enola took a deep breath, trying to sort through the complexities of the situation. She knew Miss Thornton's pain all too well. The disappearance of a loved one, especially a sister, was a wound that could never fully heal. But Enola had learned over the years that grief could not cloud judgment. They had to focus on the truth now, not the past. Adelaide was drawn into the society, Miss Thornton. They promised her something, power, knowledge, something she couldn't resist. She must have known there were risks, but she believed in the society's cause. But the truth is, the society is after the key because they think they can control it. They think they can wield its power for their own gain. And we can't let them, Miss Thornton whispered, her voice trembling. But how? Where can we hide it? Enola thought for a moment, tapping her fingers against the edge of the table. There was no easy solution. The society had resources, connections, and a vast network. Hiding the key in plain sight wouldn't work. Enola needed a place they'd never think to look, a place so hidden, even the most determined would miss it. I've been thinking about something, Enola said, her voice gaining strength. Your father kept this journal, right? And the books, the notes, everything connected to the society. What if the place we need to hide the key is one of his old hideaways? Miss Thornton raised an eyebrow. A hideaway? Yes, Enola said, her eyes lighting up with the idea. If your father was truly involved with the society, then he must have had a safe place, somewhere they couldn't find him, somewhere even his closest associates wouldn't have known about. If there's a secret vault or a hidden chamber somewhere, it's our best chance. Miss Thornton hesitated for a moment, clearly troubled. But he never mentioned it. He would have trusted me with such a secret, wouldn't he? Enola considered this. Not if he was trying to protect you. If your father had discovered the true power of the key, and if he was trying to keep it from the society, he might have kept the location of such a place hidden from you, for your own safety. Miss Thornton looked away, a mixture of sorrow and guilt crossing her face. Then what are we waiting for? Let's find it. Enola and Miss Thornton spent the next several hours searching the Thornton estate, combing through old rooms, hidden compartments, and forgotten drawers. They turned over every stone, examined every locked chest, but there was no sign of the hidden vault Enola suspected might exist. It was exhausting, frustrating work, and just as the clock ticked past 2 in the morning, Enola was about to suggest they call it a night when she noticed something odd. The bookshelf in Miss Thornton's father's study. It was old, heavy, and made of dark wood. There was something off about it, the way it seemed to sag slightly on one side, as though it had been moved before. Enola stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. Miss Thornton, she said, her voice quiet with realization, could this be it? Miss Thornton, who had been rifling through a drawer in the desk, glanced up and followed Enola's gaze. She gasped when she saw the bookshelf, her expression shifting from exhaustion to curiosity. Do you think? Miss Thornton whispered, her voice faltering. Enola didn't wait for a response. She stepped forward and gently pushed the bookshelf, her hand sliding along the edge. To her surprise, the entire shelf shifted, revealing a small, narrow door hidden behind it. It was a secret entrance, barely noticeable in a dim light. Miss Thornton stared at the door in shock. "I never knew it was there." Enola smiled slightly. "I told you. Your father must have hidden it here, knowing the society might come looking for the key." With a deep breath, Enola took the handle and pushed the door open. It creaked with age, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into the darkness below. The air was thick and cool, and there was a musty smell of old stone and forgotten things. "Shall we?" Enola asked, glancing at Miss Thornton. Miss Thornton nodded, her face a mixture of awe and fear. "After you." The staircase led them into a small, stone-walled room beneath the house, cold and dim, with a single, narrow window near the ceiling that let in just enough light to reveal the stone shelves lining the walls. In the center of the room was a wooden chest, large, sturdy, and clearly old. Enola approached the chest cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. She knelt in front of it and examined the lock. It was intricate, old-fashioned, and seemed to be designed to keep even the most determined intruder out. She reached into her bag, pulling out a set of tools she had always carried with her for such moments. After a few moments of careful work, the lock clicked open, and Enola lifted the chest's lid. Inside, they found a small compartment, barely big enough to fit a person's hand, but there, on a velvet cushion, just as Enola had hoped, was another key. This one was small, delicate, and made of silver, its handle shaped like a serpent's tail, coiled into a knot. Enola's breath caught in her throat. The second key, the one that would unlock the true secret. "This is it," she whispered, lifting the key from its resting place. Miss Thornton, who had been standing behind her, stared at the key with wide eyes. "But what does it open?" she asked, her voice filled with awe. Enola glanced at the small compartment again, but this time, something caught her eye, a set of faint, nearly invisible symbols etched into the bottom of the chest. She didn't need to read them to know what they meant. They matched the symbols from the journal, from the key, and from the serpent's markings. "The truth," Enola said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This key opens what the society has been seeking all along. We have to be careful. The power hidden here could change everything." Chapter 6: The Serpent's Lair. Enola stood still, the delicate silver key resting in her hand, its cool metal a stark contrast to the warmth of her racing pulse. It was a key that held the answers, a key that would unlock a secret so dangerous that Enola couldn't shake the feeling that the world, as they knew it, was teetering on the edge of something catastrophic. The trunk had revealed more than just a key, it had opened a door into a past Enola was only beginning to understand. The Society of the Crimson Veil, the Serpent, the Whispers of Adelaide, the Hidden Power. Each thread was tied together, each piece of the puzzle leading to a greater mystery. And yet, despite all the clues, one question still lingered at the forefront of Enola's mind: what was the true power they sought, and why was it so dangerous? She turned the silver key over in her fingers, her gaze narrowing on the faint serpent design etched into the handle. The symbols from the journal, the key, the trunk, all of it pointed to something far deeper, something that had been hidden for centuries. This was no mere treasure, it was a weapon, a tool to unlock forces that could alter the very fabric of the world. Miss Thornton, Enola said quietly, her voice steady despite the growing uncertainty. I think we need to go further. The key may be part of something bigger, something the society is willing to kill for. Miss Thornton, who had been standing behind Enola in stunned silence, took a hesitant step forward. Her face was pale, her expression one of disbelief and growing concern. You think the power is here? In this house? In this room? Enola's eyes never left the chest, the newly discovered key still clutched tightly in her hand. I don't know yet, but we're about to find out. They moved toward the stone chamber together, the musty air thick with secrets. The narrow window above them let in just enough light to illuminate the dust that had settled on the walls and the floor. Everything in the room felt ancient, untouched by time, as if it were waiting to reveal itself. Enola placed the silver key in the chest's small compartment, her heart pounding. The lock clicked open easily, but the sound reverberated through the room like a bell tolling for something lost. She hesitated for a moment, then gently lifted the chest's lid. Inside, beneath a thin veil of faded velvet, lay an object so simple and yet so potent in its design. A book. Old, its cover worn with age, the spine cracked from years of neglect. But it wasn't just any book, it was bound in dark leather, and etched into the cover were the same serpent symbols she had seen on the key. This is it, Enola whispered, her voice barely audible as she carefully removed the book from the chest. This is what they were after. This is what Adelaide was trying to find. Miss Thornton stepped closer, her breath catching as she looked down at the book. The Codex of the Serpent, she said softly, as though the words were pulled from the depths of her memory. That's what my father called it. But it was always just a rumor. A myth. No one truly believed it existed. Enola's fingers brushed against the cover, a faint warmth seeming to pulse beneath her touch. She could feel its weight, not just physically, but in a deeper sense. This book held the key to something much larger, and with it came a sense of inevitability that Enola could not ignore. We're about to find out what it really is, Enola said, more to herself than to Miss Thornton. This book, this codex, it holds the power that the society wants. The power they believed they could control. Miss Thornton stepped back, clearly uneasy. But if it's true, if it really does contain that power, what if we can't stop it? What if opening it is the mistake we've been trying to avoid? Enola shook her head, her mind already working through the possibilities. If we don't stop them, the society will use it to reshape everything. We need to understand it first. Only then can we make sure they never get their hands on it. With trembling fingers, Enola opened the book. The pages were brittle with age, each one delicate and fragile. She turned the first page carefully, her eyes scanning the ancient script that covered the parchment. The language was unfamiliar, but Enola had seen symbols like these before, etched into the key and the journal. It was a code, one that, with enough time, she could decipher. But as her eyes moved over the page, something caught her attention, something written in the margins in a different, more familiar hand. The words were in English, though scrawled hastily, as if the person who had written them was trying to make sure their warning was not ignored. Do not unlock what is sealed. The serpent is a lie. It will devour the world. Enola's breath caught in her throat. The words were a warning, and they only confirmed what she had feared. The book, the key, the serpent, it wasn't about control. It was about destruction. Someone, somewhere, had tried to keep the codex sealed for a reason. What does it mean? Miss Thornton asked, her voice trembling as she peered over Enola's shoulder at the writing. The serpent is a lie? Why would someone say that? Enola's mind raced. She could feel the weight of the decision she was about to make. Every instinct told her that this was the heart of the mystery, the key to understanding everything. But what if opening the codex was the exact thing that would bring the society, and all their dark ambitions, down upon them? I don't know yet, Enola replied, her voice tight. But I intend to find out. Enola spent the next several hours poring over the pages of the book, using every scrap of her knowledge and every ounce of her intellect to decipher the ancient language. The symbols and cryptic phrases began to reveal themselves slowly, and as they did, the meaning became clear. The Codex of the Serpent was not just a book, it was a map. A map to a hidden power that had been lost for centuries. The serpent, which had been etched into the key, the codex, and the trunk, was a symbol not of control, but of destruction. It was a representation of the force that the society had sought for so long, the force that could bring down governments, topple kingdoms, and change the course of history. The power described in the codex wasn't something that could be controlled. It wasn't a tool for wealth or influence. It was an uncontrollable force, one that could consume everything in its path, the serpent devouring its own tail, forever. As Enola continued to decipher the book, a sudden realization struck her. This power, this dark force, had been sealed away for a reason. Someone, long ago, had hidden it to protect the world from itself. And now, Enola was holding the key to unlocking it. This is bigger than we thought, Enola murmured, her voice thick with the weight of the revelation. We can't let the society have this. But how do we stop them? Miss Thornton asked, her voice filled with desperation. Enola stood up, closing the book carefully. We find a way to seal it again. We destroy the codex, and the key, before anyone can use it. The determination in her voice was clear. She knew what she had to do. She could no longer just solve a mystery. Now, she had to protect the world from the consequences of unlocking the serpent's truth. And that meant the society would have to be stopped, once and for all. Chapter 7, The Gathering Storm. The rain had returned, falling in heavy sheets that blurred the line between earth and sky, turning the cobblestones of Bloomsbury into a slick, treacherous path. The world outside the Thornton estate felt distant, muffled by the downpour, but inside, the air was thick with urgency. Enola stood by the window, her fingers pressing lightly against the cold glass, her mind racing with the weight of the decisions ahead. The Codex of the Serpent was no ordinary book, it was a weapon, a dangerous tool that the Society of the Crimson Veil sought to wield. The key, the serpent, the ancient power locked within, it was all too much to bear alone. But Enola knew she could not do this without help. The Society's reach was vast, their resources endless, and they would stop at nothing to gain control of what Enola now held. Turning from the window, she met Miss Thornton's gaze. The older woman's face was etched with concern, but there was also a fire in her eyes, a fierce determination. She had been through so much, and yet, she stood resolute beside Enola. We need to act quickly, Enola said, her voice steady but filled with the weight of what was to come. The society knows we have the codex now. We can't keep running. We need to finish this, before they do. Miss Thornton nodded, her jaw clenched. But what's our next step? How do we destroy it? How do we stop them? Enola paused, a flicker of doubt crossing her mind, but she pushed it aside. She couldn't afford to hesitate, not now. She had already uncovered too much. It wasn't just about solving a mystery anymore, it was about saving the world from the destruction the society wanted to unleash. We need to find the place where the codex and the key were created, Enola said, turning to the stack of papers and journals scattered across the table. Your father's journals mentioned a place, a hidden sanctuary where the codex was sealed. If we can find it, we can destroy the key and the codex where they were forged. But it won't be easy. The society is already on our trail. Miss Thornton's face paled at the mention of the society, but she squared her shoulders, determination hardening her features. We'll find it. We have to. Enola knew Miss Thornton was right. They didn't have time to waste. The codex held the power to change everything, and if the society got their hands on it, it would be too late. The next morning, after a fitful night of rest, Enola and Miss Thornton set out to trace the origins of the codex and its key. They scoured every document, every journal, and every note left behind by Miss Thornton's father, searching for any mention of the hidden sanctuary. But as the hours ticked by, Enola began to feel the weight of the task settle on her shoulders. They were no closer to finding the answers they needed. It wasn't until the afternoon, when Enola stumbled upon a forgotten map hidden in the back of one of the journals, that the pieces began to fall into place. This is it, Enola said, her voice filled with excitement. She spread the map across the table, pointing to a location deep in the English countryside. This is where the codex was hidden. It's a place called the Hollow of Serpents. Miss Thornton leaned over the map, her eyes narrowing as she studied the location. The Hollow of Serpents? She repeated, her voice trembling. That's where the codex was supposed to be sealed. But it's just a legend. No one has ever been able to find it. Enola nodded, her mind already working through the next steps. It's not a legend anymore. It's real. And we're going to find it. The journey to the Hollow of Serpents was long and arduous. The rain had not stopped, and by the time Enola and Miss Thornton arrived at the outskirts of the forest, the sky had darkened, casting an ominous shadow over the land. The dense woods seemed to stretch on forever, their trees looming like silent sentinels, watching their every move. They followed the map, navigating through the labyrinth of trees and brambles, their path obscured by the relentless downpour. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air heavy with the weight of history and the knowledge that they were walking into a place where dark secrets had been buried for centuries. After what felt like hours, Enola's sharp eyes caught sight of something through the trees, a stone archway, partially obscured by ivy and moss. It stood tall and imposing, ancient and weathered, as if it had stood watch over this place for longer than time itself. The Hollow of Serpents. Enola felt her breath catch in her throat as they approached. This was it, the place where the codex had been sealed, where the key had been hidden, where the power of the serpent had been locked away. And now, it was up to Enola to make sure it stayed hidden forever. "Are you sure about this?" Miss Thornton asked, her voice tight with apprehension. Enola nodded, her resolve unwavering. "We have no choice. The society is hunting us. We need to finish what your father started and destroy the codex, once and for all." They passed through the stone archway, stepping into the hollow of serpents. The air here was colder, the atmosphere thicker, as if the very earth itself was holding its breath. The ground was uneven, the path winding down into a deep, shadowed valley. The trees here were older, their trunks gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. As they moved deeper into the hollow, Enola's eyes darted around, searching for any sign of the hidden sanctuary. She had a nagging feeling that they weren't alone, that the society was closer than they realized. Miss Thornton, too, seemed on edge, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "This place, it feels wrong," she whispered. "It's as if the land itself knows what we're here to do." Enola didn't reply. She couldn't afford to be distracted. She needed to stay focused. The codex, the key, the serpent, they were all part of something far larger than herself. And if she didn't act quickly, the society would take it all. They reached the center of the hollow, where the ground was level and dotted with strange stone pillars. In the center of the clearing stood a stone pedestal, ancient and weathered. It was the perfect place to seal away a power like the codex. "This is it," Enola said, her voice barely a whisper. She placed the silver key in the palm of her hand and stepped forward, her fingers trembling slightly. But as she approached the pedestal, something strange happened. A faint hum seemed to fill the air, vibrating through the ground beneath her feet. The symbols on the silver key began to glow faintly, casting an eerie light in the growing darkness. The serpent's eyes seemed to gleam, as if alive. Miss Thornton took a step back, her eyes wide. "Enola, what's happening?" Before Enola could respond, a sudden rustling sound broke through the stillness. The air seemed to shift, and out of the shadows emerged a figure, a tall man, dressed in dark robes, his face obscured by a hood. Enola's heart skipped a beat as she recognized him. "The society," she breathed. The man stepped forward, his voice cold and measured. "You shouldn't have come here, Miss Holmes. The codex is ours. And you are in our way." Chapter 8, The Serpent Unleashed. The man who emerged from the shadows was tall and imposing, his face shrouded in the deep folds of his hood. Enola's heart pounded in her chest, and for a moment, everything around her seemed to slow. This was it, the moment she had been dreading. The Society of the Crimson Veil had found them, and with them, the key to unimaginable power. The man's eyes gleamed from beneath the hood, their coldness unmistakable. "You've been meddling in affairs far beyond your understanding, Miss Holmes," he said, his voice smooth and chilling. "You should have stayed away. But now, it's too late." Enola stood tall, refusing to let fear show. She gripped the silver key tightly in her hand, the serpent's eyes gleaming in the dim light. It felt almost as if the key were alive, reacting to the presence of the stranger. She knew this was no mere coincidence. He had come for it, for the power locked within. "We're not giving it to you," Enola said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at her insides. "You don't understand what this is. You have no idea what you're dealing with." The man chuckled softly, a low, menacing sound that sent chills down Enola's spine. "Oh, I understand perfectly, Miss Holmes. It's you who doesn't understand. You think the codex is a weapon, a curse. But you're wrong. It is the key to controlling all things, time, reality, life itself. And the society will wield that power to reshape the world. To perfect it." Enola's mind raced. She had spent so much time piecing together the mystery of the codex, the key, and the serpent, but now, facing the society, everything seemed clearer, and yet, far more dangerous. The truth was that they were on the brink of something catastrophic. The power the society sought was not something anyone should have. Not even Enola. Miss Thornton stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "You're wrong. My father knew the truth. He spent his life keeping it hidden because it's too dangerous. You're playing with forces you don't understand." The man's gaze shifted to Miss Thornton, his lips curling into a cold smile. "Your father was a fool, Miss Thornton. He tried to keep the power locked away, but power always finds a way to escape. We will use it. And when we do, nothing will stand in our way." Enola's eyes darted between the man and the pedestal. The glowing symbols on the silver key seemed to pulse with increasing intensity, as though they were drawing energy from the air around them. She could feel it too, the power, barely contained, just waiting to be unleashed. "Stop!" Enola shouted, holding the key high. "You don't understand. The serpent doesn't control power, it consumes it. The codex is a prison, not a weapon. If you unlock it, everything will be destroyed." The man's eyes flickered with a momentary flash of amusement. "You still don't get it, do you, Miss Holmes? You think you understand, but you don't. The serpent is not a prison. It is the force that will remake the world. We will take it, and the world will bend to our will." The hum of the key grew louder, and Enola felt a sudden wave of dread wash over her. This wasn't just about unlocking the power, it was about unleashing a force that would change everything. Reality itself could warp and bend in ways no one could predict. There was no going back once it was opened. "Miss Holmes," the man continued, stepping closer, his voice low and taunting. "You think you can stop us? You, a child? You're already too late." With that, the man reached for the key. Enola instinctively stepped back, clutching it tightly to her chest. She couldn't let him take it, not now, not ever. She could already feel the pressure of the world bearing down on her. The choice before her was clear: either destroy the key and the codex, or risk everything. "You won't get it," Enola said, her voice shaking with defiance. "I will not let you unlock it." In one swift motion, the man raised his hand. A burst of energy, dark, electric, and crackling with raw power, surged toward Enola. She felt it before she saw it, the air thickening around her, pressing in on all sides. The key pulsed violently in her hand, and for a brief moment, she was almost overwhelmed by the force of it. Miss Thornton cried out, but Enola stood firm, her mind racing. The key, the serpent, it had to be sealed away. But how? "The serpent consumes power," she thought, remembering the words she had read in the codex. "It feeds on it. It's not a key, it's a force that cannot be controlled." Enola's heart raced. She had to act quickly. The key needed to be destroyed, not just hidden. The pedestal in front of her seemed to shimmer with an unnatural light, and the air felt heavy, like a storm was about to break. "Miss Thornton!" Enola shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. "Get the codex! We need to burn it. Now!" Miss Thornton hesitated, her eyes wide with fear. But Enola's voice was sharp, urgent. She had no time to waste. With a trembling hand, Miss Thornton reached for the codex. The moment her fingers touched the book, the air around them crackled again, more violently this time, and a deep, guttural roar echoed from the shadows. It was as if the earth itself was protesting, as if the very fabric of the world was beginning to tear apart. The man from the society stepped forward, his hand outstretched, his eyes blazing with anger. "Fools! You cannot destroy it. You are too weak to control the power of the serpent." Enola could feel the pressure building in her chest, the storm of energy surging around them, threatening to explode at any moment. She had one chance, just one. "Do it!" Enola yelled. Miss Thornton, her face pale with fear, opened the codex and held it over the pedestal. As she did, Enola slammed the silver key into the center of the book, locking it into place. The moment the key made contact with the codex, the room was filled with a deafening sound, a high-pitched hum that seemed to shake the very air around them. Light flashed from the pedestal, blinding them both. For a split second, Enola thought she might be consumed by the force, but she held her ground, pressing the key harder into the codex. Suddenly, there was silence. A deathly silence that seemed to stretch on forever. When the light faded, Enola found herself kneeling on the ground, her breath ragged, her heart still pounding in her chest. The pedestal was gone, along with the codex, and the key had disappeared with it, leaving only a faint, glowing imprint on the stone. The man from the society lay motionless on the ground, his body crumpled, the dark energy that had surrounded him dissipating into the air. It was as though the power had been sucked out of him, consumed by the very thing he had sought to control. Enola slowly stood up, her legs unsteady, and turned to Miss Thornton. Her face was pale, but there was a sense of relief in her eyes. "We did it," Miss Thornton whispered. Enola nodded, though her mind was still reeling from what had just happened. The power of the serpent had been contained, but at what cost? The force they had unleashed was something that could not be undone, and the consequences of their actions would echo through time. But for now, the world was safe. Chapter 9: The Aftermath. The storm outside had finally passed, but the world inside the Hollow of Serpents was still, silent, almost unnaturally so. Enola stood in the center of the clearing, her breath coming in shallow gasps as she tried to steady herself after the intense, overwhelming surge of energy that had filled the air only moments before. The ground beneath her feet seemed to hum with a residual vibration, as though the very earth itself was recovering from the shockwave of power they had just unleashed. Miss Thornton stood beside her, equally stunned, her face pale but her eyes wide with a mix of relief and disbelief. The codex was gone, the key had vanished, and the man from the Society of the Crimson Veil, who had so confidently believed he could wield the power of the serpent, was now motionless, crumpled on the ground. His presence was a fading shadow, the dark energy he had carried dissipating into the air, leaving nothing behind. "I can't believe it," Miss Thornton murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's really over." Enola nodded, though her mind was still racing. They had won, for now. The codex had been sealed, the key destroyed, and the power of the serpent contained. But Enola could feel the weight of their actions pressing down on her. They had meddled with forces that had been sealed away for a reason. The consequences of what they had done weren't just unknown, they were vast, stretching into every corner of their world. But it was too late for regrets. The decision had been made. And she had to live with it. What happens now? Miss Thornton asked, her voice trembling as she glanced at the empty pedestal where the codex had once been. Enola turned slowly, her gaze sweeping over the clearing, taking in the broken remnants of what had once been a sacred place. Now, we return home, she said quietly. We find a way to make sure the society can never reach this place again. We can't risk it falling into the wrong hands. They stood there for a long moment, the silence of the hollow stretching out, as if the world was waiting for something. Enola's mind was still processing the weight of everything that had happened, the whispers of the serpent, the warnings in the codex, the ancient power they had almost unleashed. It was too much to comprehend all at once. But one thing was clear, the world was never going to be the same. What had been sealed away for centuries had been released, even if only for a brief moment. And the ripples of that moment would spread far and wide. We can't tell anyone what happened here, Enola added, turning back to Miss Thornton. Not yet, at least. The truth is too dangerous. If the society finds out we've destroyed the codex, they'll come after us again. We need to make sure this place stays hidden, and the power stays sealed. Miss Thornton nodded solemnly, her eyes still fixed on the spot where the codex had been. You're right. The society has always had eyes everywhere. If they know what we've done, they'll stop at nothing to undo it, Enola finished, her voice heavy with the realization. That's why we need to act quickly. They made their way back through the hollow, retracing their steps through the dense trees, the air still heavy with the weight of their actions. The forest around them seemed quieter now, as if even nature was holding its breath. Enola's mind was consumed with thoughts of what would come next. The society might have been defeated for now, but there were still so many unknowns. Who else was out there searching for the codex? Were there other factions who had known about the serpent's power, waiting in the wings for their chance to claim it? As they reached the edge of the hollow, Miss Thornton stopped suddenly, her hand gripping Enola's arm. Enola, I don't know what to say. You've saved us. You've saved the world. But I feel like there's so much more to this. So many questions. Enola turned to her, meeting her gaze. I know, she said, her voice soft. We've only uncovered a small part of the truth. There are still mysteries left to solve, things that are hidden, even from me. But I can't think about that right now. We have to go back, keep our heads down, and make sure the society doesn't come looking for us. I'm with you, Miss Thornton said, her voice firm. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Enola smiled, a small, weary smile that held a touch of gratitude. Thank you, Miss Thornton. I don't think I could have done this without you. By the time they reached the Thornton estate, the sun had begun to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the land. The storm had passed, and the world seemed to return to some semblance of normalcy. But Enola knew it was an illusion. They had only just begun to understand the true depth of the mystery they had uncovered. And the consequences of their actions were still unfolding, rippling through the world like the aftermath of a storm. Inside the estate, the fire in the hearth crackled softly, offering a small comfort against the growing uncertainty. Enola and Miss Thornton sat in the sitting room, the heavy silence between them filled only by the crackling of the flames. Enola's thoughts wandered back to the codex, the key, the serpent. To Adelaide. She still didn't have all the answers. She may never have them. But for now, at least, the immediate danger had passed. That's it, isn't it? Miss Thornton said, breaking the silence. We've done everything we could. Enola looked at her, a deep sadness in her eyes. It's never really over, is it? We've stopped the society for now, but I have a feeling they won't give up. There's too much power in what we've found. But they won't find it again, Miss Thornton said, her voice firm. It's hidden. And they don't know where to look. Enola nodded. For now, we've won. But we need to stay vigilant. There will always be someone else looking for the power we've sealed away. And we have to be ready. As the fire flickered low, Enola couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the codex held. There were pieces of the puzzle left untouched, corners of the world still unexplored. She had solved this mystery, yes, but she knew that the next one would be waiting just around the corner. Her journey was far from over. Chapter 10, Echoes of the Serpent. The days following their return to the Thornton estate passed in a blur of restless nights and half-formed thoughts. Enola couldn't shake the feeling that the storm that had passed through the Hollow of Serpents hadn't truly been the end. No, it was merely the beginning of something far more intricate. The codex may have been sealed, the key destroyed, but in the deep recesses of her mind, Enola knew that there was more at stake than what they had uncovered. The Society of the Crimson Veil had been thwarted for now, but they weren't the only ones who sought the power of the serpent. Enola had read enough to understand that this ancient knowledge was more than a relic, it was a force, one that could rip apart the fabric of reality itself. Yet, as much as Enola knew she should rest, her thoughts kept returning to that moment in the hollow, when the energy had surged so violently, when the ground itself seemed to tremble with the release of such overwhelming force. The serpent had been contained, but it had not been vanquished. Its whispers, the hum of its power, still lingered in the back of her mind. It was late one evening when the first unexpected visitor arrived. The rain had returned, filling the air with a soft, drumming rhythm against the windows. Enola was sitting by the fire, the flickering light casting long shadows over the room, when she heard the sound of a carriage pulling up outside. Miss Thornton, who had been reading in the corner, glanced up from her book, her brow furrowing. I wasn't expecting anyone, Miss Thornton said, a note of confusion in her voice. Enola rose to her feet, her instincts immediately on high alert. Whoever it was, they weren't here by chance. The carriage was too quiet, its arrival too precise. Stay here, Enola said quietly, her voice sharp. She moved toward the window, peering through the misted glass. The silhouette of a lone figure stood near the door of the estate, his coat billowing in the wind. She turned back to Miss Thornton, her gaze steady. I think it's time we see who's looking for us. The knock at the door came shortly after. Enola opened it without hesitation, her hand resting lightly on the small dagger she kept at her side, just in case. The man standing on the threshold was tall, dressed in a long, dark coat, his face partially obscured by the shadows of his hood. He didn't speak at first. He simply stood there, his gaze locked on Enola with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. I've been looking for you, Miss Holmes, he finally said, his voice smooth, calm, but with an edge that suggested he was not a man to be trifled with. Enola studied him carefully, her eyes narrowing. And you are? My name is Elias Vance, the man replied, his lips curling into a small, knowing smile. I represent an organization of like-minded individuals. We have an interest in the Codex of the Serpent. The mention of the Codex immediately caught Enola's attention. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the society wasn't the only group hunting the power of the serpent? What do you want? Enola asked, her voice steady, though she was now fully aware that the stakes had just risen considerably. Elias stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room behind her as if assessing the situation. We need to talk, he said simply. There's much you don't understand about the Codex, Miss Holmes. Much you and your friend are unaware of. The power of the serpent isn't just about control. It's about survival. Enola's hand instinctively went to her dagger again, her suspicion growing. I'm not interested in your riddles, Vance. If you're here for the Codex, you've come to the wrong place. Elias chuckled softly, an unsettling sound. I'm not here for the Codex itself. Not exactly. I'm here because you and I, Miss Holmes, are on the same side. The Codex may be sealed, but it's not gone. There are consequences to what you did. And I've come to fair you a choice. A choice? Enola's eyes narrowed. I don't make deals with men like you. The Codex was sealed for a reason. We stopped the society from unleashing its power, and we intend to keep it that way. Elias's smile faded slightly, but his composure remained unshaken. You're not listening, Miss Holmes. The Codex was never meant to be sealed away forever. The serpent's power, it's not just a force of destruction. It's a force of balance. And right now, that balance is on the brink of collapse. There are others, far older than the society, who understand its true purpose. They've been waiting for someone like you to come along. Someone who can unlock it again. Enola took a step back, her thoughts whirling. What was he saying? Unlock it again? The serpent's power had been sealed. She had seen the consequences of it firsthand. What could possibly be worth unlocking? Why should I trust you? Enola asked, her voice firm. You're just another person with your own agenda. Elias's eyes darkened for a moment. Because, Miss Holmes, you and I both know that the power of the serpent doesn't just belong to the Codex. It's a part of the world itself. And if you don't understand how to control it, then it will control you. Enola's mind raced. She didn't know what he was talking about, but the weight of his words settled heavily on her shoulders. The serpent was not just a key to power, it was alive, connected to everything. The balance he spoke of, was it possible that the Codex had been a safeguard, not just to hide the power, but to maintain equilibrium? Why would you come to me? Enola asked, her voice quieter now, but still filled with suspicion. What is it you think I can do? Elias's gaze softened, just for a moment. Because you've already proven yourself, Miss Holmes. You've seen the truth. The Codex was never just a book, it was a warning. The serpent devours what it touches. And those who would seek to control it are doomed to fail. But you have a mind sharp enough to understand what's at stake. You're the one who can stop it. But you have to choose to use it. Enola stood frozen for a moment, the weight of his words pressing on her. She had been so focused on keeping the serpent's power sealed away that she hadn't stopped to consider the broader implications. Could it be that Elias was right? Was the codex meant to be used, not locked away? What if it could be harnessed, but only by those who understood its true purpose? She shook her head, trying to clear the confusion from her mind. I don't trust you, Vance. I won't fall into your trap. Elias's expression turned more serious, his eyes intense. I'm not your enemy, Miss Holmes. But the world is changing. The power of the serpent is rising again. And if you don't act, if you don't make the choice, then you'll see how quickly things unravel. Enola's mind was spinning as she stood in the doorway, facing Elias Vance. She had done everything in her power to contain the serpent's power, but now she realized that the true battle was only just beginning. Elias was offering her a path, one she couldn't yet fully see, but he was right about one thing: the serpent was a force beyond comprehension, and it would not remain hidden forever. The choice was hers. Chapter 11: The Serpent's Path. The door closed softly behind Elias Vance, but the weight of his words lingered, pressing down on Enola's shoulders like an invisible hand. She stood there for several moments, frozen in place, her mind racing with the possibilities. Elias had made his intentions clear. He was not an enemy, at least not in the conventional sense. But Enola wasn't sure if she could trust him. The Society of the Crimson Veil had been after the Codex, yes, but Elias seemed to be offering her something else, something far more complicated. Miss Thornton had been watching quietly from the corner, her brow furrowed in concern. "Who was that?" she asked softly. "What did he want?" Enola turned, her expression a mixture of frustration and confusion. "He claims to be from a different group, one that understands the true power of the Codex. He says the serpent isn't just a weapon of destruction, it's a force that maintains balance. That it's not meant to be locked away forever, but to be used by those who understand its purpose." Miss Thornton's eyes widened. "Used? After everything we've been through, now he wants us to use it?" Enola nodded, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the key that she had carefully hidden in the folds of her coat. "That's what he says. He believes that by unlocking the power of the serpent, we can prevent the world from falling into chaos." "Chaos?" Miss Thornton repeated, her voice edged with disbelief. "How could using such power prevent chaos? It's exactly what caused it in the first place." "I don't know," Enola admitted, her voice quiet. "I don't know if I can trust him. But if what he says is true, and the serpent is a force meant to balance the world, then we may have no choice but to confront it." The room was heavy with silence as both women pondered the enormity of what lay ahead. The Codex was no longer just an artifact to be protected. It was a key to something greater, something that could change the course of history. Enola's gaze drifted back to the window, where the rain had finally stopped. The world outside seemed quiet, deceptively so. She knew, though, that beneath the surface, there was a storm brewing. The Society, Elias's group, and the power of the serpent, it was all interconnected, and Enola was now at the center of it all. "What do we do now?" Miss Thornton asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Enola turned back to her, her expression set with determination. "We need to learn more about Elias and the group he represents. But more than that, we need to understand the true nature of the serpent's power. If we can unlock it, we need to control it. And if we can't, then we'll have to seal it away once and for all." The following days were filled with research and strategy. Enola and Miss Thornton pored over every journal, every note, every map and cryptic message they could find. Elias had given them a new puzzle to solve, and the pieces were slowly beginning to fit together. But the more Enola read, the more questions arose. The Codex was not just a book of knowledge, it was a map to the ancient rituals that had been used to unlock the serpent's power. The serpent, as Elias had said, was not merely a weapon to be wielded. It was a force of nature, a balance between creation and destruction. It could tear apart the fabric of time itself or restore it to its original state. Enola couldn't help but wonder if they had made a mistake by sealing it away. What if the serpent wasn't meant to be destroyed? What if the key to saving the world was to understand it, to wield it? One evening, as Enola sat in front of the fire, a letter arrived, delivered by a messenger she didn't recognize. The envelope was unmarked, but the moment she opened it, she recognized the handwriting. It was Elias's. "Miss Holmes, I trust you've been thinking about my offer. There is much you still don't know, and time is running out. The power of the serpent is not simply a tool, it is the world's lifeblood, its heart. To ignore it is to invite disaster. The forces that seek it now are not the society alone. There are others who will stop at nothing to claim it. I offer you a choice, work with us, or face the consequences. I await your response. Elias Vance." Enola set the letter down carefully, her mind already whirring. Elias was right about one thing: the power of the serpent was not just about control. It was about balance. But how could she trust him? He spoke of using the serpent to save the world, but what if his true intentions were darker than that? She looked up at Miss Thornton, who had been quietly observing her reaction. "What do we do now?" Miss Thornton's eyes were full of uncertainty, but there was a new determination in them as well. "We can't trust him. But we can't ignore him either. There's too much at stake." Enola nodded, her thoughts already racing. "We need to go to him. We need to know exactly what he and his group are after. But we need to be careful. I don't trust that the power of the serpent is something anyone should control. If we're going to face this, we need to be prepared." The journey to meet Elias was planned quickly. Enola and Miss Thornton knew they had no time to waste. The world was changing, and the forces surrounding the serpent's power were only growing stronger. They traveled to the outskirts of London, to a quiet, secluded manor that Elias had described in his letter. The house was an old, imposing structure, hidden from view by a thick fog that seemed to cling to it like a secret. As Enola and Miss Thornton approached, the gate creaked open by itself, as if it had been waiting for them. Inside, Elias greeted them with a cool, welcoming smile. "Miss Holmes. Miss Thornton. I'm glad you've come. I trust you've had time to consider my offer." Enola stood tall, her eyes sharp as she surveyed the surroundings. The manor was filled with books, thousands of them, stacked haphazardly on shelves that reached from floor to ceiling. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of old paper and dust. "I've considered it," Enola said, her voice steady. "But I don't trust you. And I don't trust your motives." Elias's smile didn't falter. "Wise. Trust is not something to be given lightly. But I can offer you something you cannot afford to ignore. Enola's gaze hardened. And what's that? The key to controlling the serpent's power, Elias said softly, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of knowledge. But it's not just a matter of unlocking it. It's a matter of understanding it. And that is something only a select few can truly grasp. You've seen the power, Miss Holmes. You know what it can do. What if I told you there was a way to use it without causing destruction? To restore what has been lost? Enola's mind raced. Was this the same power she had feared? Could Elias truly be offering a solution, a way to control it? Or, Elias continued, his voice turning darker, you could destroy it, as you tried before. But you and I both know that the world cannot be saved by destruction alone. You may stop the society, but you won't stop the balance from tipping. The serpent's power is too great to be sealed away forever. Enola stood still, her mind a swirl of questions. What if Elias was right? What if destroying the serpent was not the answer? But then a darker thought crossed her mind. What if Elias had his own agenda? What if the serpent's power wasn't meant to save the world at all? Chapter 12, The Choice. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, its orange glow casting long shadows across the dimly lit room. Enola stood motionless in front of Elias Vance, his words echoing in her mind like a haunting refrain. The serpent's power. The balance. Control. Destruction. What was the right choice? Elias's eyes never left hers, his face unreadable, but there was an intensity in his gaze that unsettled her. He wasn't just speaking of power, he was speaking of destiny. Of a future shaped by forces far beyond her understanding. And, whether she wanted it or not, Enola knew that the key to that future lay in her hands. You don't understand, Miss Holmes, Elias said, his voice low and calm. The serpent is not just a tool. It is a force that governs the world's balance, life, death, creation, and destruction. For centuries, those who sought to control it have either failed or fallen. The reason they failed was simple: they tried to force it into a mold that could never contain it. But you... Enola stepped back, her mind spinning. But you want to control it, Elias. You're asking me to unlock a force that has caused destruction and chaos, a force that nearly tore the world apart before. Elias's expression softened, though his eyes remained sharp. I'm not asking you to control it, Miss Holmes. I'm asking you to understand it. To let it be what it truly is, and to use its power to restore what has been broken. Her heart raced as his words sank in. The temptation was there, lurking just beneath the surface of her fear. What if unlocking the serpent's power wasn't about destruction? What if it could heal, rather than harm? Could they really control it, without falling into the same traps that had ensnared the society and countless others before them? But even as the thought crossed her mind, a nagging sense of unease crept into her thoughts. Enola wasn't naive. She knew power could corrupt, and those who sought it rarely had the world's best interests in mind. Was Elias truly offering a solution, or was he simply another man who wanted to use the serpent for his own gain? I don't trust you, Enola said, her voice firm, but beneath the words, she felt a growing doubt. You've been too vague. What exactly are you offering me? Elias took a step closer, his tone coaxing, almost persuasive. I'm offering you a way to harness the power without destroying everything in its path. The codex, the key, the serpent, they all belong to you now, Miss Holmes. You've proven that you understand what's at stake. You have the ability to wield it, if you choose. The words belong to you echoed in her mind. Enola felt a strange pull, a sense of ownership she had never experienced before. Was this what had been waiting for her all along? The truth that the serpent was not merely a mystery to be solved, but a force that had been guiding her, leading her towards something greater? She glanced at Miss Thornton, who had been standing quietly at the edge of the room, watching the exchange with wide eyes. Miss Thornton, as always, was her anchor, the one person Enola trusted above all others. But now, Enola could see the conflict in her eyes, the same uncertainty that mirrored her own. "What do you think, Miss Thornton?" Enola asked, her voice softer now, the weight of the decision heavy on her. "Can we trust him?" Miss Thornton looked at Enola, her face drawn with concern. "I don't know, Enola. I don't know if I can trust him. But I know that the serpent's power is not something we can ignore. We've seen what it can do, and we've seen how it corrupts. But there's one thing I do know, we can't keep running from it forever." Enola met Miss Thornton's gaze and saw the fear and the resolve in her eyes. The serpent's power had already begun to shape their lives, and no matter how hard Enola tried to ignore it, the truth remained, the serpent was part of her destiny. "I've already made my choice," Enola said, her voice steady, though the doubt still gnawed at her. "But it's not just my life at stake, it's everyone's." Elias smiled, a knowing, almost predatory smile. "Exactly. The world cannot remain as it is. The balance is tipping, Miss Holmes, and you are the only one who can restore it." The decision had been made, but Enola felt the weight of it pressing down on her more heavily than she had anticipated. The serpent's power was now hers to command or destroy. Elias had made his offer clear: control it, restore the balance. But could she trust him? Could anyone? As Enola and Miss Thornton made their way to the center of the manor's grand library, the gravity of the situation became even clearer. Elias had led them here not to reveal a secret, but to make a choice. The codex was not merely an artifact. It was a key to something more, something Enola didn't yet fully understand. And it was up to her to decide whether the serpent would be a force of good or a harbinger of destruction. Miss Thornton stood at her side, her eyes fixed on the desk in front of them. "If we unlock this power, we must be prepared for the consequences. No one can predict what will happen once it's set free." Enola nodded, her eyes scanning the pages of the codex. "We won't know until we try. But if we don't act now, the society will. And they won't be as careful as we will be." For a long moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the codex pressing down on them. Enola's fingers hovered over the book, but before she could make a move, the door to the library creaked open. The figure that stepped inside was one that Enola had feared she might see, a man cloaked in shadows, his presence filling the room like a storm. His eyes gleamed with the same cold intensity that had once filled the society's halls. "Miss Holmes," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I see you've made your choice. But you should know, there's still time to reconsider." Enola's heart skipped a beat. She turned to face the new arrival, her expression defiant. "And you are?" The man smiled, his face a mask of practiced indifference. I'm someone who understands the true cost of the serpent's power, Miss Holmes. The world will change regardless of what you choose. But it will be your choice that decides whether it is for better or worse. Enola felt the floor shift beneath her feet, the weight of the decision suddenly bearing down on her with an even greater force. The serpent was calling, its power vibrating through the room like a living thing, and she had but moments to decide what to do with it. Chapter 13: The Serpent's Awakening. The room was heavy with the weight of unspoken truths, the air thick with tension. Enola stood before the figure who had just entered, her heart pounding. The man, shrouded in the dark cloak of the society, was a familiar yet unwelcome presence. His eyes gleamed with something that went beyond simple knowledge. It was the cold certainty of someone who believed he had already won. "Who are you?" Enola's voice was sharp, her gaze fixed on the intruder, her hands instinctively going to the key hidden within her coat. The weight of the decision pressing down on her had never been more intense, and yet here was another force, another shadow, lurking in the background, as if ready to claim what she had worked so hard to protect. "I am someone who understands the true cost of what you're about to do, Miss Holmes," the man said, stepping into the dim light. His voice was calm, yet it carried an edge, a knowing tone that unsettled Enola. The serpent's power cannot be controlled. It's a force of nature, unstoppable and destructive. Once you unlock it, there's no turning back. Enola clenched her fists, feeling the pulse of the key beneath her palm. She had already made up her mind, but his words struck a chord. Unstoppable. Destructive. Was this what she was about to unleash? Had she miscalculated? Could she truly control what the society had spent centuries trying to harness? "You're from the society," Miss Thornton said quietly, her voice betraying the fear that had begun to take root in her heart. "What do you want with the codex?" The man smiled, a cold, calculating expression that chilled Enola to the bone. "What do we want?" "We want the same thing you want, Miss Thornton. We want control of the power of the serpent. You may believe that it's dangerous, but the truth is, it's the only thing that can restore balance. You've sealed it away, thinking you've done the world a favor. But you're wrong. The world is tipping into chaos, and the serpent is the only force that can stop it." Enola's mind raced. She had heard similar arguments from Elias Vance, but this man, the society, had a different approach. His words were filled with conviction, and there was a chilling certainty in his tone that made her question everything she had been fighting for. "The world doesn't need more power," Enola said, her voice steady, though doubt gnawed at her. "It needs balance. The codex was sealed for a reason. Power like the serpent's is too dangerous to control." The man's smile widened, but it was devoid of warmth. "Control? No, Miss Holmes. It's not about control. It's about restoration. There are those who understand what the serpent is, a force of nature, not a tool to be wielded. Why? You've unlocked part of its power, but you've only scratched the surface. You've sealed away its true potential. And that, Miss Holmes, is where you're wrong." He took a step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "You've chosen to play the hero, to seal away the power, but the world is changing. The serpent can restore it to what it was meant to be. You can't stop it. The balance must be restored, and you are the key to unlocking it." Enola felt her breath catch in her throat. The weight of the words settled over her like a shroud. Was this truly what she had been trying to stop? The serpent, a force of nature, capable of restoring balance, was it a power worth unlocking? Or was it a force too dangerous to set free? No, Enola said, her voice unwavering, though her heart pounded. I won't give in to you. I won't give in to the society. The man's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing. You don't have a choice. The world is already moving toward destruction. If you won't unlock the power willingly, we'll take it by force. With a swift motion, he reached out, his hand a blur of dark intent, aiming for the codex. But Enola was faster. Her hand shot out, intercepting him before he could touch it. The key pulsed with energy, the serpent's eyes gleaming faintly as if sensing the impending conflict. You think you can control it? Enola's voice was a low hiss. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The man's lips curled into a sneer. We'll see about that. He lunged at her, his hand glowing with dark energy as he attempted to seize the codex, but Enola was ready. She twisted to the side, bringing her elbow sharply into his ribs, knocking him back. Her heart raced, but her resolve was clearer than ever. She wouldn't let him take it. Not now. Not after everything. As the man staggered back, Miss Thornton grabbed the codex from the table and held it close to her chest. We can't let them have it, Enola. We can't. Enola nodded, her eyes fixed on the intruder, who was already recovering, his gaze now filled with pure malice. You've made your choice, Enola said, her voice cold. But you're not getting the codex. Not now, not ever. The man laughed, a low, mocking sound. You think you can stop us? You can't even stop yourselves from being pawns in this game. The serpent's power is greater than you realize, Miss Holmes. You're only delaying the inevitable. Enola stepped forward, her fingers tight around the key. She had to act now, or everything she had done would have been for nothing. She could feel the pulse of the key as it hummed in her hand, like a heartbeat, like the breath of the serpent itself. This was the moment. She looked at Miss Thornton, who was still holding the codex tightly. Get ready, Enola said, her voice steady. When I give the signal, throw it into the fire. Miss Thornton's eyes widened in shock. What? But... Just trust me, Enola interrupted, her gaze never leaving the man. If we don't destroy it, we're playing right into his hands. The man's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing with fury. You're making a mistake, Miss Holmes. But it doesn't matter. You can't stop what's already begun. With that, he surged forward, his hand crackling with dark energy as he reached for the codex. But Enola was ready. In a flash, she spun around, launching the silver key into the air, sending it spinning through the room. The moment it hit the air above the fire, the codex flared to life, glowing brightly with a fierce, white-hot intensity. The energy surged out of it, sending shockwaves through the room. Time seemed to slow as the room filled with a blinding light, the force of the power surging toward the codex, but before the man could react, Miss Thornton threw the book into the fire. The flames roared to life, engulfing the codex in an instant. The serpent's power twisted and writhed, unable to escape, its energy trapped in the fire. The light in the room dimmed as the last remnants of the codex were consumed. For a moment, there was silence. Then the room seemed to shudder, the earth itself groaning under the weight of the power that had been unleashed. The man from the society staggered back, his face twisted in fury. "You've doomed us all," he hissed. "The world will burn, and you will have no one to blame but yourselves." Enola's chest tightened as she watched the man retreat, his figure disappearing into the shadows, his words echoing in her mind. "The world will burn." But Enola held her ground. She had made her choice. The serpent's power was not meant to be used, and though she didn't know what the future held, she knew one thing: she had stopped the society, and she had stopped the serpent. Chapter 14: A World on the Edge. The room was thick with smoke from the fire, the crackling of burning wood the only sound as Enola stood in the center of the manor's library, her hands still trembling from the intensity of what had just transpired. The codex was gone, reduced to ash, consumed by the flames. The serpent's power, which had once threatened to unravel the world, was sealed away once again. But Enola could not shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. The man from the society was gone, vanishing into the shadows with his threats hanging in the air, but his words echoed in Enola's mind. "The world will burn, and you will have no one to blame but yourselves." Had they truly made the right choice? The codex was destroyed, yes, but at what cost? The serpent's power had been contained, but something in Enola's gut told her that the forces at play were far larger than anything she had yet encountered. The society, Elias Vance, the balance of the world, these were not mere puzzles to be solved. They were the threads of a larger tapestry, and Enola had just pulled at one, unknowingly setting off a chain of events that might have consequences she couldn't yet foresee. Miss Thornton was silent beside her, her face pale, her gaze fixed on the embers of the fire. She had been the one to throw the codex into the flames. It had been Enola's plan, but Miss Thornton had been the one to carry it out. And now, they were both left to pick up the pieces. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Miss Thornton asked, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Enola swallowed hard, her mind spinning with 1,000 different thoughts. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't know if we'll ever know. But it was the only choice we had. The codex couldn't be allowed to fall into the wrong hands, and the power of the serpent, no one should control that. No one." "I know," Miss Thornton said quietly, though there was a distant look in her eyes. "But it feels like we've only scratched the surface. I can't help but wonder what will happen now." Enola stepped away from the fire, her thoughts turning inward as she considered the weight of their actions. The codex was gone, the serpent's power sealed away, but they hadn't just destroyed an artifact. They had changed the course of history. "Whatever happens now," Enola said, her voice steady, "we have to be ready for it. The society won't just go away. There will be others. Elias, he's not the only one who understands the power of the serpent. If anything, destroying the codex may have just opened the door for more people to come after it." Miss Thornton's eyes widened. "You think there's more?" "There's always more," Enola replied grimly. "The society isn't the only group seeking control over this kind of power. And if we've learned anything, it's that the balance of the world isn't something that can be ignored for long." The next few days were filled with uncertainty. The remnants of the codex lay in the ashes of the fire, its power extinguished, but its influence was still felt. Enola spent hours searching through the journals and papers that had once belonged to Miss Thornton's father, looking for clues that might explain the serpent's true nature, or perhaps shed light on what Elias had hinted at, that there were those who understood the serpent's power and knew how to harness it. But all she found were fragments, old records of the society, cryptic references to ancient rites and symbols, and mentions of an organization that seemed to have no name. The walls of the Thornton estate, once a sanctuary, now felt like they were closing in around her. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside, felt like a reminder that there were forces at work that Enola could neither understand nor control. She sat down at the desk, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. The serpent had been contained, but the question remained, had they truly sealed it away for good? A sudden knock on the door broke her thoughts, and she turned toward it, startled. She hadn't been expecting visitors. The messenger, whoever it was, had come unexpectedly, just as the world around her had shifted into a new and unknown direction. "Miss Holmes," a voice called softly through the door. It was the familiar tone of the servant who had been with Miss Thornton for years. Enola rose from the desk, her curiosity piqued. "Yes," she called. The door opened slowly, and to her surprise, the servant wasn't alone. Standing in the doorway, shrouded in a heavy cloak, was a figure Enola didn't recognize. A tall man, his face obscured by a shadowed hood. He stood there for a moment, as if unsure whether to enter, but when he spoke, his voice carried an air of calm certainty. "Miss Holmes," he said, his voice low but steady, "I need to speak with you." Enola's heart skipped a beat. Her instincts flared. She knew, instinctively, that this was no ordinary visitor. "Who are you?" Enola asked, her voice firm. The man pushed back his hood, revealing sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. His face was lined with age, but his gaze was youthful, intense. "My name is Alistair Voss," he said, offering a small nod. "And I've come because I believe you're in more danger than you realize." Alistair Voss stepped inside, and Enola's mind immediately began to work. He was no stranger to the world of secrets and intrigue. His demeanor was one of quiet authority, and there was something about him that hinted at knowledge far deeper than what he had let on. "What kind of danger?" Enola asked, her suspicion growing with every word he spoke. She motioned for him to sit, but she remained standing, her posture rigid. Voss sat carefully, his eyes never leaving hers. "The serpent's power may have been sealed away, but that doesn't mean it's gone. And it doesn't mean the world is safe. The codex wasn't just an artifact, it was a beacon, a guide. And now that it's been destroyed, the balance has been disrupted. The serpent isn't the only force that can change the course of the world. Others are coming." Enola's stomach tightened. "Who?" Voss leaned forward, his voice lowering. "There are groups far older than the society, organizations that have been watching, waiting, for centuries. You've stopped the immediate threat, yes. But you've also made a dangerous move. By destroying the codex, you've left a void, a gap in the balance. And that void, Miss Holmes, will soon be filled by those who understand the true nature of the serpent's power." Enola swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" Voss's eyes softened for the first time. "I'm offering you a choice, Miss Holmes. You've made a decision before, but it was a decision made in haste. If you don't take action now, the serpent's power will be sought after again, by those who will use it for far darker purposes. But you still have time. You can learn to understand it. Or you can let the world collapse into chaos. Enola felt a chill crawl down her spine. Voss was right, her actions had set something in motion. The serpent wasn't gone. It was still out there, waiting. And she was the one who had to decide how to stop it, or if it could even be stopped at all. "I'm listening," she said, her voice steady, despite the storm raging inside her. Voss's smile was small, but it held a sense of certainty. "Then let's begin." Chapter 15, The Final Choice. The fire in the Thornton estate had long since burned down to embers, casting faint shadows across the room where Enola stood, facing Alistair Voss. The weight of the world seemed to hang in the air, thick with the tension of what was about to unfold. Enola could feel the serpent's power stirring in the depths of her mind, a presence that she had only begun to understand. It wasn't just a force, it was alive, pulsing with potential and danger. Alistair's words hung in the silence. "You still have time, Miss Holmes. You can choose. The serpent's power is something that can be understood, but only by those willing to face the truth. The world will keep moving, whether you're ready or not. The question is, what will you do with the power you've unlocked?" Enola stood still, her mind racing, every instinct screaming at her to make the right decision. Understand it or destroy it. That was the choice before her. The serpent's power could be a tool for balance, a way to heal what had been broken. But it could also be a weapon, a force that could tip the world into chaos once again. The codex was gone, and she had destroyed it for a reason. But had she truly sealed away the right thing? Miss Thornton stood beside her, her hand resting lightly on Enola's arm. She had been quiet, listening to Voss's words, but there was something in her eyes now, a quiet strength. "Enola," she said softly, "we can't let the world fall apart. The serpent's power, it's too dangerous to leave unchecked. But can we control it? Can anyone?" Enola's heart tightened. She wanted to say yes, that she could control it, that she had the strength to wield it. But the truth was, she didn't know. No one had ever controlled the serpent. Those who had tried were either corrupted or destroyed. And yet, here she stood, with a power that could change the course of history in her hands. "I can't keep running," Enola said finally, her voice steady, though she felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her like never before. "I've spent my life looking for answers, for truths buried in the shadows. But now, the truth is here, right in front of me." Alistair Voss watched her intently, his expression unreadable. "Then you've made your choice?" Enola didn't answer immediately. Her thoughts drifted back to the fire, to the codex burning in the flames, to the man from the society and the threats he had made. The world was teetering on the edge, and only she could decide how to tip the scales. "The serpent can't be controlled by anyone," Enola said finally. "Not completely. But I can choose not to let it destroy the world. I can choose to understand it, not to use it, but to ensure that it remains where it belongs. In the past." Voss nodded slowly, a flicker of something passing across his face, something like respect. "Very well, Miss Holmes. The choice is yours. But remember, power never stays hidden for long. You'll have to keep moving, keep one step ahead. There will be those who will always seek it. And they will stop at nothing to claim it. Enola's grip on the silver key tightened, the weight of her decision suddenly all-consuming. She had no illusions about the road ahead. She would never be free of the serpent's shadow. The balance between creation and destruction was delicate, and she was the one tasked with maintaining it. For now, the serpent's power would remain sealed, but the fight to keep it contained would be endless. Enola took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Alistair Voss's. "I'm not afraid of what's to come. I'll face it. I'll make sure the serpent remains where it belongs." With that, she turned to Miss Thornton, who smiled softly, her eyes filled with quiet pride. Enola had made her choice. The serpent's power was not a weapon to be wielded, but it was a force that could not be ignored. And as long as Enola stood between it and those who would seek to control it, she would protect the world from the darkness it could bring. The days that followed were filled with travel and secrets, Enola and Miss Thornton moving swiftly, staying hidden in plain sight. The serpent's power might have been sealed away, but its influence was far-reaching, and Enola knew that the world would not rest until it was free again. She kept the silver key close, but the power within it was not hers to control, not yet, not ever. They moved through cities and villages, learning more about the ancient societies that had once worshipped the serpent, searching for those who had once sought to harness its power. Every day, Enola grew more aware of the delicate balance she was trying to maintain, and of the growing danger from those who would stop at nothing to obtain the serpent's true power. One evening, as the sun began to set over the horizon, casting a golden hue over the landscape, Enola and Miss Thornton stood atop a hill, gazing out at the world before them. It was quiet, peaceful, but Enola knew the truth. This was only the calm before the storm. The serpent's power was still out there, waiting to be claimed. "You'll face whatever comes, won't you?" Miss Thornton asked, her voice quiet but resolute. Enola turned to her, a small, determined smile crossing her face. "I will. I've made my choice. The serpent will stay where it belongs, hidden, forgotten, and never again to be used as a weapon. I'll keep it that way, no matter what." Miss Thornton nodded, her eyes glinting with admiration. "You're not alone, Enola. I'll stand with you. Whatever happens, we face it together." Enola looked out over the world, her heart steady. The world had changed, but she was ready. She had chosen her path, and now, she would walk it, one step at a time. The serpent was not her enemy, but its power was. And as long as she lived, she would protect the balance, and make sure it never again fell into the wrong hands. The world is full of mysteries, and Enola Holmes has only just begun to uncover the secrets that could change the fate of humanity. Will she be able to keep the serpent's power sealed, or will darker forces rise to claim it? Keep reading, for Enola's journey is far from over. The next chapter is waiting. Are you ready to follow her into the unknown?